Chapter 1. The Reading. I don't even know where to start. Maybe by saying this feels like something out of one of those wild Reddit threads you read at 2 a.m. and think, no way this actually happened. But it did. It happened to me. And it changed everything I thought I knew about my family, my future, and myself. When my dad passed away, I was devastated. He wasn't a warm, affectionate father. He was old school, the kind of man who believed in hard work, discipline, and results. Love, in his world, was shown through providing, not hugging. But still, I loved him, and for the past decade, I had been right there by his side, working in his company. I skipped vacations, I broke off relationships because I was too busy with work. I turned down job offers from friends who built their own startups. Why? Because I believed one day my sacrifice would mean something. My father had built Hastings Enterprises from the ground up, and I knew I was being groomed to take over. The day of the will reading, I walked into the lawyer's office carrying both grief and a strange sense of purpose. This was supposed to be the moment when my father's hard work officially became mine to continue. I should have known better. The office was too cold, the air conditioner humming in the background. A polished oak table separated me from Carol, my stepmother. She was dressed like she was going to a gala instead of her husband's will reading. Tight black dress, flawless makeup, red lipstick. She looked powerful, smug. Carol and I never got along. She came into my dad's life after his divorce from my mom, and I'll be honest, I always saw her as a gold digger. She was charming when people were watching, but cruel when no one was around. I caught her belittling my mom, mocking her, even manipulating my dad with sweet words when they fought. And now, sitting across from me, she had the same expression a cat has when it's cornered a mouse. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. According to the last will and testament of Mr. Robert Hastings, I sat straight, hands folded, waiting for the words I'd been anticipating my whole life. He went through the formalities first, minor accounts, stocks, some real estate properties. Then came the bomb. The entirety of Hastings Enterprises, including all associated assets, subsidiaries, and real estate holdings, shall be left to my wife, Carol Hastings. The words echoed in my ears. I blinked once, twice. My brain refused to process. Did he just say Carol gets everything? The lawyer continued like nothing was wrong. To my son, Daniel Hastings, I leave the lake cabin property in Vermont and a trust account in the amount of $50,000. And that was it. I froze. 10 years of grinding for my father's business, sacrificing friendships, relationships, and pieces of myself for a cabin and a bank account that couldn't even buy a decent apartment in the city? I felt my jaw lock. My heart pounded so hard, I thought everyone in the room could hear it. Carol didn't even try to hide her smile. She glanced at me, leaned back in her chair, and crossed her legs like she'd won a prize. "Don't look so shocked, Danny," she said smoothly, her voice like poison wrapped in honey. "Your father and I talked about this. He knew you weren't ready to run a company of that size. This was the responsible choice." Her words hit me harder than the will itself. My father didn't think I was capable? After everything I did, after all the nights I worked until dawn while he was at home sleeping next to her? I clenched my fists under the table until my nails dug into my skin. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, clearly aware of the tension, but kept quiet. Carol leaned forward just a little and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "You were never enough. Now run along and play with your little cabin." That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I walked out of that office in a haze. People passing me on the street looked blurry, like I was underwater. I couldn't hear the traffic, couldn't feel the late summer sun on my face. all I could think about was that smug smile. For days, I barely slept. Friends told me to let it go, that it wasn't worth the fight. They said, she has the money, the lawyers, the connections. You can't win against her. And maybe they were right. Legally, Carol owned everything now. The paperwork was airtight. Challenging the will would just drain the little money I had. But here's the thing. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't even about property. It was about betrayal. About being erased from my father's legacy like I never mattered. I sat in that dusty cabin he left me, staring at the peeling paint, the outdated furniture, the lake outside, and something clicked. Carol thought she had won. She thought she had broken me, reduced me to nothing. But she underestimated one thing. I wasn't going to fight her in court. No, I was going to outsmart her. I would build something of my own, bigger, stronger, smarter. I knew the weaknesses of Hastings Enterprises better than anyone. Hell, I ran half the operations while she was busy shopping. I knew which contracts were shady, which clients were restless, which employees were loyal only out of habit. If she thought I was going to roll over, she was dead wrong. My revenge wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be immediate. It would be slow, strategic, ruthless. I would rise from nothing. I would build an empire of my own. And when the time was right, I'd take everything she thought was hers and watch her crumble. That night, in that broken down cabin he left me, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to destroy her.
Chapter 2. Building the War Machine. People love to talk about revenge like it's a hot flash of rage. Like you scream, break a few plates, throw a punch, and it's over. But that's not what real revenge is. Real revenge is cold, calculated. It's a slow burn, not a spark. And I had every intention of burning Carol alive. Metaphorically, of course. I started small. Too small for her to notice. I sold the lake cabin, the one gift my father left me. It hurt, I won't lie. There were memories in those wooden walls. Fishing trips when I was 10. Summers where I thought my dad actually cared. But I needed capital more than nostalgia. With that money and the little trust fund, I launched a consulting startup. Nothing flashy, just me and a laptop and a cheap apartment downtown. The funny thing was, I already had credibility. For years, clients saw me in meetings with my dad. They remembered the kid in the corner who kept his mouth shut but took notes on everything. Now I wasn't the kid in the corner. I was the one calling. "Danny Hastings," one of them said when I reached out. "Didn't think I'd hear from you. What happened with your dad's company?" I told them part of the truth, that my stepmother had taken over, that things were different now. I didn't have to lie. Carol was already burning bridges on her own. She had no idea how to run a company, but she loved pretending she did. I positioned myself as the alternative, smaller, more agile, hungrier, and slowly, one by one, they started giving me contracts. The first few months were hell. I worked 16-hour days in that apartment. No assistants, no staff, just me and a mountain of coffee. But with every contract I signed, every client I won, I felt stronger. And I wasn't alone for long. I reached out to people I trusted from Hastings Enterprises. People I knew were miserable under Carol's leadership. Take Mark, for example. He'd been head of operations for 15 years. The guy practically kept the place alive while Carol threw money at parties and vanity projects. I called him one night, voice shaking because I wasn't sure if he'd laugh or hang up. "Mark, it's Danny." He sighed. "Kid, I was wondering when you'd call." That was all it took. He was in. Then came Julia, a marketing genius who Carol had sidelined because she didn't like bossy women. Funny coming from Carol. Julia didn't just join me, she brought two of her best people along. Piece by piece, I was building my army. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on Carol. Not directly, of course, but through whispers in the industry. And the whispers weren't kind. She was overspending, treating employees like garbage, making promises she couldn't keep. She had no idea how contracts worked, and she thought charm could replace competence. It couldn't. One night, over drinks with Julia, I laid it out. She's bleeding the company dry. If we move fast enough, we can take her biggest clients before she realizes what's happening. Julia smirked. And then what? Then, I said, staring into my glass, we keep going until there's nothing left for her to stand on. It wasn't just business, it was personal. Every win felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Every client I stole from her was like ripping a brick out of her empire's foundation. But revenge has a way of changing you. I wasn't the same kid who walked out of that lawyer's office shattered. I was harder now, sharper. People said I had a new look in my eyes, cold, calculating. And they were right. The old me wanted to prove my father wrong. The new me, I wanted to prove Carol wrong and watch her choke on it. 6 months in, I landed a massive contract, one that Carol had been courting for months. I knew because I recognized the name, one of my dad's old partners. The client called me directly. Danny, we've seen the direction Hastings Enterprises is going, and frankly, we're not impressed. We'd like to work with you instead. When I hung up the phone, I laughed hard. It was the kind of laugh that scares you a little because it feels too good. Carol was going to lose her mind when she found out. And she did. A week later, I heard through the grapevine she'd called an emergency board meeting, screaming about betrayal and disloyalty. But the truth was simple. People weren't loyal to her. They were loyal to competence. And competence was something she lacked completely. For the first time since my father's death, I felt alive. But I wasn't done, not even close. That night, staring out the window of my tiny office as the city lights blinked below, I made another promise. This wasn't just about stealing clients. This was about building something so undeniable, so powerful, that even if my father were alive, he'd have no choice but to admit, I was enough. And Carol, she was just a footnote in the story of my rise. The war had only just begun.
Chapter 3: The Fall. Revenge isn't instant. It's patience. It's watching the cracks form in someone's armor and waiting until the moment they don't just break, they shatter. And Carol, she shattered beautifully. By the 1-year mark, my company wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. We'd gone from a rented shoebox office with secondhand desks to a sleek downtown space with 20 full-time employees and a waiting list of clients. Meanwhile, Hastings Enterprises was a sinking ship. I didn't even have to push too hard. Carol did most of the work for me. Her arrogance, her obsession with appearances, her refusal to listen to people who actually knew what they were doing, it was like watching a slow-motion car crash. She'd throw extravagant galas while payroll got delayed. She signed reckless contracts just to show off, then couldn't deliver on them. Employees were leaving in droves. Some came straight to me, resumes in hand, desperate for stability. It was poetic. The final blow came with a deal that should have saved her company. A massive logistics contract that, if secured, would have kept Hastings Enterprises afloat for years. Carol had been bragging about it for months. What she didn't know, the client had already been talking to me. I didn't even have to beg. I laid out my numbers, my team, my vision. We were leaner, sharper, hungrier, and unlike Carol, we could actually deliver. The day they signed with me instead of her, I felt something I can't even describe. Satisfaction doesn't cover it. It was vindication. It was the ghost of my father finally whispering, "You did it, son." The fallout was brutal. Within weeks, Hastings Enterprises collapsed. Suppliers pulled out, clients jumped ship, employees quit en masse. Headlines called it the fastest implosion of a mid-sized firm in decades. And through it all, I stayed quiet. No gloating, no interviews, just silence. Because silence sometimes is the loudest sound of all. Then came the night Carol showed up. I was in my office late going over quarterly reports when the receptionist buzzed me. Danny, there's someone here to see you, says it's important." I sighed. "It's almost 9 p.m. Who is it?" A pause. "Carol Hastings." For a second I thought I misheard, but when I walked out to the lobby, there she was. Gone was the polished queen in black dresses and red lipstick. She looked hollow. Her hair messy, makeup smeared, a wrinkled coat hanging off her shoulders. She looked 10 years older than the last time I saw her. "Danny," she said softly, almost like she was choking on the word. "We need to talk." We sat in my office, the same place where I'd built everything from scratch. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, letting her squirm. "I know we've had our differences, but you have to understand, your father trusted me." I cut her off. No, he trusted me. I was the one who ran the numbers, signed the contracts, stayed up until dawn fixing his mistakes. He may have written your name on the will, but we both know who really kept that company alive. Her eyes welled up. "I made mistakes, I see that now, but I'm drowning, Danny. I don't have anyone left. The boards abandoned me, the employees hate me. Please, I need your help." She reached across the desk, like touching me would make her plea stronger. I pulled my hand back. "Do you remember what you told me the day of the will reading?" I asked. Her lips parted, but no words came. "You leaned in," I said slowly, savoring every word, "and you told me I was never enough, that I should just run along and play with my little cabin." Her face went pale. "Well, Carol, turns out the cabin was enough. I was enough." I stood up, towering over her as she crumbled in the chair. "You wanted to play dirty. You wanted to humiliate me. Congratulations. You succeeded. But here's the thing about playing dirty. When you lose, no one has sympathy." She opened her mouth, maybe to beg again, maybe to curse me. I'll never know. Because I walked to the door, opened it, and said, "Get out." The last image I have of her is Carol stumbling into the hallway, her heels clicking unevenly on the tile, her shoulders slumped. For the first time in my life, I felt free. It's been 2 years since then. My company is bigger than ever. We're profitable, respected, and expanding faster than I ever dreamed. Sometimes people ask if I miss Hastings Enterprises, if I miss carrying my father's legacy. And the truth is, no. Because his legacy isn't a building or a company name. It's me. I am the legacy. I built something from nothing, with my own hands, my own mind. As for Carol, last I heard, she sold her jewelry and moved out of state. No one in the industry takes her calls anymore. She's a ghost? Funny how things work out. Revenge doesn't erase the past. It doesn't heal every wound, but it does something almost as good. It balances the scales. And when I look at where I am now versus where she is, I know one thing for sure. Justice was served. Cold.